Trust is a delicate thread that once broken can never be fully mended. The mistress of Oakwood Plantation learned this lesson in the cruelest way possible when her own web of deceit unraveled around her, revealing that the one she had used as a plaything was actually the architect of her downfall. Some betrayals cast shadows far longer than the moment they occur, extending across generations and altering the course of countless lives. Have you ever given your trust to someone only to discover they were wearing a mask the entire time? That sinking feeling in your stomach when you realize the person you thought you knew was actually a stranger with motives you never suspected. The pain of betrayal cuts deeper than any knife, leaving wounds that never fully heal, only becoming scars that remind us of our vulnerability. The year was 1858 in the lush countryside of Virginia, where the Oakwood plantation stretched across 500 acres of fertile land. The white columns of the main house gleamed in the southern sun, standing as proud sentinels over fields of cotton that seemed to extend to the horizon. The air carried the heavy scent of magnolia blossoms mixed with the earthy smell of soil freshly turned by enslaved hands. In this place of superficial beauty and underlying cruelty, Eleanor Blackwood reigned as mistress following her marriage to plantation owner William Blackwood, a man 30 years her senior, whose declining health had left him increasingly confined to his bedchamber. At 22 years of age, Eleanor had secured for herself a position of privilege and power that she wielded without concern for those beneath her station, particularly the 97 human beings who were considered property under her husband's name. Among those enslaved at Oakwood was a man known to everyone as Samuel, who at 30 years of age had risen to the coveted yet precarious position of house servant. His light complexion and refined mannerisms had made him a favorite of the previous mistress, who had taught him to read secretly, an act that would have been punishable by law if discovered. Samuel moved through the grand house with quiet efficiency, his eyes always lowered in the presence of the master and mistress, yet missing nothing. Behind his carefully composed expression lay a mind that observed, calculated, and remembered everything. What no one at Oakwood knew was that Samuel was not merely the obedient servant he appeared to be. In the world beyond the plantation, in circles where freedom was fought for rather than granted, he was known by another name and possessed a history that would have shocked the household he served. Eleanor Blackwood had noticed Samuel from her first day at Oakwood. Unlike her husband, whose interest in the management of the plantation had waned with his health, Eleanor took pleasure in asserting her authority over those enslaved on the property. She found particular satisfaction in commanding Samuel, whose education and dignity she sensed beneath his carefully maintained facade of subservience. There was something in his eyes that suggested he was more than what he presented, a depth of thought that both intrigued and irritated her. When her husband became bedridden, Eleanor found herself increasingly bored and restless in the confines of the plantation house, with only the occasional visits from neighboring plantation families to break the monotony. It was during one such period of tedium that she first began to view Samuel as more than just a servant. The incident that set the stage for betrayal occurred on a sweltering August afternoon when Eleanor found herself alone in the house, save for Samuel and the cook. William had been prescribed laudanum for his pain, which left him unconscious for hours at a time. Eleanor had summoned Samuel to her private sitting room, ostensibly to help rearrange furniture, but in truth because she had developed a fascination with him that had grown into desire. As he moved the heavy writing desk according to her instructions, she observed the strength evident in his shoulders and arms. When he had completed the task, she dismissed him with a casual wave of her hand, but then called him back as he reached the door. The look that passed between them in that moment contained a dangerous understanding. Eleanor knew the power she held over him, and she recognized the risk she was taking, but the thrill of the forbidden was too enticing to resist. For Samuel, the moment presented both danger and opportunity, though not in the way Eleanor imagined. What began that afternoon developed into a secret affair that continued through the autumn months. Eleanor would create reasons to send other servants away, ensuring moments of privacy when she could summon Samuel to her room. She treated these encounters as amusing diversions, laughing at the scandal she was creating behind her ailing husband's back, secure in the knowledge that Samuel could never reveal their relationship without risking his life. She never considered him a person with feelings or motives of his own, merely an object to be used for her entertainment and discarded when she tired of the game. In her arrogance, she failed to see that Samuel engaged in this dangerous liaison with his own purpose, one that had nothing to do with affection or desire for her. Unknown to Eleanor, Samuel was more than the seemingly compliant house servant. He was in fact Joshua Freeman, born free in Philadelphia, and educated there before voluntarily entering the dangerous world of slavery as a spy for the Underground Railroad. For 5 years, he had lived as Samuel, sending information north about plantation defenses, patrol routes, and safe houses. His position in the Blackwood household had been hard-won through years of careful work, and he had helped guide 12 people to freedom during his time at Oakwood. The affair with Eleanor was a calculated risk, one that gave him access to information he could never otherwise obtain, including William Blackwood's correspondence with other plantation owners about slave patrols and bounty hunters. Eleanor believed she was the one in control, laughing behind her hand when Samuel was forced to serve her and her husband at dinner just hours after they had been intimate. The cruel pleasure she took in watching him maintain his servile demeanor, while she made suggestive comments that only he would understand, never failed to amuse her. She would deliberately drop items for him to pick up, brushing against him when no one was looking, enjoying the power she held over him. She never once considered that the man she was using for her entertainment viewed their encounters as merely transactional, opportunities to gather information that would help others escape the bondage she helped enforce. The turning point came when Eleanor discovered she was with child. The timing made it impossible for William to be the father, as his illness had prevented marital relations for many months. In a panic, she confided in Samuel, expecting him to be fearful and submissive in the face of this complication. Instead, to her shock, he suggested a solution. He knew of herbs that could terminate the pregnancy, he told her, and he could obtain them discreetly. Desperate and seeing no alternative, Eleanor agreed, never questioning why an enslaved man would possess such knowledge or be willing to help her in this way. Samuel provided the herbs, which Eleanor took as directed, becoming violently ill afterwards but achieving the desired result. I want to pause this story for a moment to ask you directly. When was the last time you trusted someone and felt that stab in your chest, that silent warning that something wasn't right? I know you may never have shared this with anyone. It's that pain we keep, thinking no one will understand. But here, in this space we're creating together, your experience matters. If you felt this silent betrayal, leave in the comments just the words "I recognize this feeling," and see how many people share this invisible wound. Your comment could be the first step for someone to realize they're not alone on this journey. Let's continue the story now, but carrying this reflection with us. What Eleanor did not know was that Samuel had been planning a large-scale escape involving 15 people from Oakwood and the neighboring plantation. The herbs he gave her, while effective for her purposes, also ensured she would be too ill to notice the unusual activities taking place on the property the night of the escape. As she lay in her bed, weak and feverish, Samuel was leading men, women, and children through the darkness toward freedom. By the time Eleanor recovered enough to resume her normal activities, the escape had been discovered, and the plantation was in turmoil. William Blackwood, despite his illness, was enraged by the loss of valuable property and demanded that the local slave catchers be called in immediately. The aftermath of the escape brought an unexpected visitor to Oakwood. A notorious slave catcher named Jeremiah Holt arrived with his team of men and tracking dogs. Holt's reputation for cruelty was well known throughout Virginia, as was his near-perfect record of returning escaped slaves to their owners, often in conditions that rendered them unsuitable for anything but the most basic field work. Eleanor, still weak from her ordeal but determined to maintain the appearance of the proper plantation mistress, received Holt in the drawing room. As they discussed the escape, Holt revealed that he had been tracking the activities of an Underground Railroad agent believed to be operating in the area for some time. This agent, he informed her, was known to infiltrate plantations by posing as an enslaved person, sometimes for years gathering information and facilitating escapes. As Holt spoke, Eleanor felt a chill of suspicion begin to form. He described the agent as educated, likely of mixed race, able to move between white and black worlds with ease. When he mentioned that this particular agent was known for seducing white women to gain access to sensitive information and create diversions, the blood drained from Eleanor's face. She excused herself abruptly, claiming her recent illness still affected her, and retreated to her room where she began to piece together the disturbing truth. The timing of her illness and the escape could not be coincidental. The realization that Samuel had used her, rather than the other way around, filled her with a rage that overwhelmed any fear of discovery of her own transgressions. That evening, when Samuel came to light the lamps in her sitting room, Eleanor confronted him. At first she spoke in veiled terms, watching his reactions carefully, but as her anger grew, she became more direct, finally accusing him outright of being the Underground Railroad agent. She expected denial, fear, perhaps even pleading. What she received instead was a transformation that left her speechless. Samuel straightened to his full height, meeting her eyes directly for the first time without the mask of subservience. In that moment, Eleanor saw the man behind the carefully constructed facade, the intelligence and purpose that had been there all along, hidden in plain sight. Samuel, or rather Joshua, confirmed her suspicions without apology or regret. He told her his real name, his history, and his purpose at Oakwood. He spoke of the people he had helped to freedom, including those who had escaped during her illness. With quiet intensity, he described the families reunited, the children who would grow up free, and the women who would never again be subject to the kind of exploitation she had visited upon him. His words struck Eleanor like physical blows, forcing her to see herself through his eyes, not as the clever mistress playing an amusing game, but as a predator, using her position of power to abuse someone she considered beneath her. In a final devastating revelation, Joshua informed Eleanor that her husband had not been ignorant of her affair as she had believed. William Blackwood had known for months, having been told by another house servant loyal to him. His apparent deterioration had been partly an act, designed to lull Eleanor into a false sense of security, while he made changes to his will. The new will, Joshua told her, had already been filed with the lawyer in Richmond. It provided for the bulk of the estate to go to William's nephew from Boston, a known abolitionist, with only a small allowance left for Eleanor, conditional on her good behavior, as judged by the nephew. The illness that had kept William bedridden was real, but his mental faculties had remained sharp, and his sense of vengeance had been honed by Eleanor's betrayal. Stunned by these revelations, Eleanor threatened to expose Joshua to Holt, who was at that moment sitting in the plantation office reviewing maps of the surrounding area. Joshua regarded her calmly, then placed a letter on the table between them. It was in her handwriting, a note she had foolishly written to him weeks earlier, explicitly detailing her desires and arranging a meeting in the garden house. Such evidence of a relationship with an enslaved man would destroy her socially and possibly lead to legal consequences in Virginia. The letter had been sent north for safekeeping with the last group of escapees, but had been copied before its departure. Joshua assured her that if anything happened to him, the original would find its way back to Virginia and into the hands of not only her husband, but also every prominent family in the county. Eleanor found herself trapped by her own actions. The control she thought she possessed revealed as an illusion. Joshua informed her that he would be leaving Oakwood that night, using the confusion caused by Holt's search to cover his escape. He did not ask for her silence or cooperation, merely stated the facts as they stood. If she raised an alarm, the letter would destroy her. If she remained silent, she would have to live with the knowledge of how completely she had been deceived and used, just as she had deceived and used others throughout her life. In a final twist that left Eleanor reeling, Joshua revealed that the illness she had experienced after taking the herbs he provided had been carefully calculated. While it had indeed terminated her pregnancy, it had also left her with a condition that would prevent her from ever bearing children. This had been his response to overhearing her cruelly separating an enslaved mother from her nursing infant, selling the child to another plantation, while keeping the mother at Oakwood for her skills in the laundry. Eleanor would never have the opportunity to inflict such suffering on her own children, nor to produce heirs who would continue the cycle of ownership and abuse. After Joshua left her sitting room for the last time, Eleanor remained frozen in place until dawn, the full weight of her situation settling upon her. When morning came, she learned that not only had Joshua disappeared without a trace, but so had Jeremiah Holt's personal slave, a man who had served as his tracker for years. The two had apparently fled together, along with 3 others from the plantation, taking with them Holt's best horses and weapons. The slave catcher's rage was terrible to behold, but there was nothing to be done. The trail went cold at the river, and no amount of searching revealed where the escapees had gone. William Blackwood died 3 weeks later. His nephew arrived from Boston to take possession of the estate, bringing with him new ideas about paid labor, and eventually selling off parcels of land to create smaller, more manageable farms. Eleanor found herself relegated to a small cottage on the edge of what had once been her domain, her allowance sufficient for survival but nothing more. Her social standing irreparably damaged by rumors that somehow spread about her relationship with an enslaved man, though the full truth was never known. Years later, during the height of the Civil War, a package arrived for Eleanor at her cottage. It contained only 2 items: the original letter she had written, now returned to her as it no longer held any power to harm or protect, and a short note. The note was written in an educated hand, informing her that Joshua Freeman was now Captain Freeman of a colored regiment in the Union Army. He had survived the Battle of Fort Wagner and was continuing to fight for the freedom of those still enslaved in the South. The note was unsigned, but Eleanor knew who had sent it. In a bitter moment of honesty with herself, she acknowledged that Joshua had beaten her at a game she hadn't even known they were playing, using her own worst qualities as weapons against her and the system she represented. For the rest of her life, Eleanor Blackwood lived with the consequences of her actions and the knowledge that she had been merely a pawn in a much larger battle. The man she had seen as an object to be used had revealed himself as a person of exceptional courage and intelligence, fighting for a cause greater than himself. While she had thought herself clever for maintaining a secret affair under her husband's nose, Joshua had been orchestrating the freedom of dozens of people right under hers. The final irony was not lost on her, that in her attempt to assert power over another human being, she had instead become an instrument of liberation, albeit an unwitting one. The story of Eleanor Blackwood and Joshua Freeman was never recorded in any history book, but it was told in whispers among those who had escaped Oakwood Plantation. It served as a reminder that freedom was not always won through direct confrontation, but sometimes through patient strategy, intelligence, and the willingness to use the oppressor's weapons against them. In the communities of formerly enslaved people that formed after the war, the tale took on the quality of legend, a testament to the ingenuity and courage of those who had fought slavery from within its very walls. If these stories of courage and betrayal during the slavery era touch your heart as they touch mine, I invite you to join our community. By subscribing to the channel, you'll have access to carefully researched stories that reveal long-hidden truths about our past, helping to understand wounds that still echo in our society. It's not just about knowing history, but about honoring the memory of those who lived these realities. Click subscribe and let's journey together in discovery and reflection.